So I'm going to move on, guys, and I'm just going to look at, this feels very important to me, which is what are the qualities of a transformational conversation that you start to, the skills you start to develop. In the interest of time, I'm just going to get you to throw out a few. Like when I ask that question, what are the qualities you think exist within a transformational conversation? What are they for you? What are some of the things you might expect to make up a conversation that's transformational rather than just a chat at the pub? Challenge, I like it, yes, thank you.
Good listening.
Good listening, yeah.
Honesty.
Honesty, yeah, nice.
Openness.
Openness, right? What else?
Depth.
Depth, nice. Like you've been quiet all morning and then you come in with that word, depth. Like it. What does depth mean to you?
Well, you use the example of the conversation in the pub, which is usually not about the meaning of life. And,
Oh, I see.
yeah, so,
Well, it can be, can't it?
well, depends how many you've had, I guess. You know, it would tend to be a deeper sort of conversation.
Yeah.
Deeper issues.
Interesting. My experience is that it's not necessarily deeper in that sense. Like you could have deep conversations in a pub for sure, but the quality of that conversation can be different. In other words, how it happens. And if you had that same transformational conversation with a mate, they might go like, "What's happened to you? Like you're behaving a little bit weird today." So there's something about the difference that's worth noticing.
Mood. Recognizing mood. Feelings.
Nice. Okay. Tuning into the experience of the feeling between you and of them, and of yourself as well. Perfect.
Curiosity.
Yes, absolutely.
The expectation of an outcome.
Ah, interesting. Nice, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Any more? Okay, let me share some of ours. Deep listening and hearing the unspoken. For me, those two go together. Deep listening is one thing. You listen to the language, you listen to the body language, you listen to everything that's coming at you. But you're also listening to what's not being said, what's not in the room. You know, what's the words that aren't being spoken, or what's the feelings that aren't being acknowledged, what's the truth that's not being surfaced yet. That feels really important to me. Like for me as a coach, that's where I want to work, is what's not being spoken. Even though this stuff is great, but it's like that for me is your access into the other. You hear this in order to hear that. Catalytic questioning. So what I mean by catalytic questioning is questions that create new ways of thinking. So you become a catalyst for that person's thinking. If all I say to you as a coach is, what do you want to do and how are you going to do it? Well, theoretically, you already know that. So it's not catalyzing anything for you. It's just making you regurgitate what's already up here. I want to catalyze new ways of thinking. And you always know you've got that when the person goes, huh, that's interesting. That's a catalytic question you've asked because it's new for them. Holding space, like holding space is such a core skill within coaching. Just the ability to let somebody sit with an emotion or sit with a thought. I had a client a while back, a management consultant, who was very fearful she was going to lose her job, even though there was no evidence for it whatsoever. In fact, she was doing really well and then got a promotion, weirdly enough, but she was sort of fearful she was going to lose her job. And at one point, she started to cry. It was around about session 5, and she started to cry. All my clients seem to be sad, don't they? She started to cry. And it's so important at that point just to hold the space and not try to solve the tears, because you don't know what the tears mean. Like it's so easy. I remember I was in some training recently, and somebody was being supervised, and they were crying, and this supervisor very gently reached down into her bag, got out a little bag of tissues, reached over and gave her the tissue. So theatrical. I'm like, just let the woman cry. Like, you don't need to give her a tissue, she's fine. It was so funny how she felt like she needed to be in control of the way the tears were managed with this beautifully orchestrated tissue gathering process. And it was like this. I was like, don't do that, just let her have her tears. So you hold the space, and then you can say, right now, what are those tears for? Which is what I did. Now in my head, I was thinking, she's crying because she's still afraid of being sacked or whatever. And she went, Nick, I've just realized how proud I am of what I've achieved. I had no idea that was what was going to come out of her mouth. The ability to hold space and let somebody sit with their thoughts or their emotions or their tears or whatever it is, and then do the work that's unattached from you and assuming you know the answer. Super important. Reflecting what you're feeling, reflecting what you're seeing. Hey, I notice you say this, or I notice this, or the Indian guy who would often say to me, Nick, what do you think? What do you think? And I'd say, hey, I notice this is what you say. Reflecting back is so important. Confronting uncomfortable truths. Like that's big. When you help somebody really look at what's uncomfortable, that's when change really starts to take place. Challenging beliefs and assumptions. And this is something we do on literally all the time. It doesn't mean we're being annoying, doesn't mean we're being aggressive, it just means we're just never taking anything to be true. We're just curious. Okay, how do you know that's the case? Trusting your intuition, just assuming that something about what you intuit has value. It doesn't mean it's correct, it doesn't mean it's true, it just has value. We can offer it into the space. Hey, one of the things I'm thinking is this, or what just came to me is this, or just literally just throw out a word and let them deal with it. Doesn't mean it's got any validity per se, but it's equally got value if it has value for them. Over this side, sharing the emotional impact. How does it make you feel? Do you find yourself bored? Are you finding yourself excited? Are you finding yourself anxious? What's the feeling you have? And how might that feeling be supportive to the change they're trying to make? All right, so if you're feeling a little bit uninspired by what they're saying, maybe they are too. And maybe we can start to reflect that sense of being uninspired and say, well, where's that coming from? They go, you know what, Nick, I don't even want this. It can be so powerful to notice the feelings. Working with the here and now. This is one of my favorite ways of working, which is literally what is happening right here between us that might be useful to explore. So can I give you an example off the top of my head? Karen, do you remember what I sometimes use an example for this, but I can't think what it is. Do you know? Oh, I know, the lady that typed. So there was a lady I was coaching. I used to record the sessions for my students to listen to. So ever so often I do a contract with somebody in which I coach for free, with the deal being that I can record the sessions and my students can listen to the whole journey. And one particular client would type non-stop, because she was in South Dakota. So I was coaching her, she was typing. And somebody said to me, Nick, if I were her coach, I would ask her to close the computer and be fully present for me. Now, first of all, if she closed the computer, she'd probably cut off the Skype. But let's say that I said to her, please, be present and don't type. I said to the person that said it to me, but that's to manage her behaviors away rather than to explore what those behaviors, where they're coming from. So what I actually said is, hey, Gail, I notice that as we've been going through these sessions together, you've done a lot of typing. I'm curious what that is about. And what we came to realize is that there was something about how she was trying to capture all knowledge, as though somehow by capturing it, she could have this sort of safe knowledge of who she was as a human being. And yet the reality is the journey she was on was trying to be more present in life. So there's a juxtaposition between her behavior and a desire to be more present. And we're able to utilize the here and now behavior to then say, what's that about versus what you want to achieve? Make sense? What else? Exploring future possibilities, classic coaching outcomes. I mean, this is where most people think coaching exists, and it does, but it also exists in all of this. But certainly, what is it you want to happen? How do you move towards it? Wandering lightly, it's one of my favorite things to do, wander lightly. Hey, I'm just wondering, Maria, you said this, I'm just wondering if this is what might be going on for you, or you mentioned this, and I'm just wondering, very gentle wandering. And and Maria can say, no, Nick, you've got it totally wrong. Okay, that's fine. But I think I'm right. No, I wouldn't say that. So you can just wander. The technical term is hypothesizing, but you do it in such a beautiful way that it's never done with some truth attached to it. It's not done with some expertise attached to it. Acknowledging change is super important. Like a lot of people don't see. A bit like when you're growing up and you're about yay tall, and then you suddenly are that tall, and your parent did a little line above your head, and you go, oh my God, did I grow? That happens in coaching. And then finally, you mentioned this as well, drawing to resolution, learning or change. I think something that really makes coaching different is that we actively seek the change within the space. We actively seek what has to change here for you, or what has to change out here for you. And it's interesting, one of my favorite writers is a guy called Irvin Yalom. Any of you guys know Irvin Yalom? Existential psychotherapist from the States, and a beautiful writer. And he wrote the major tome on existential psychotherapy. It's called Existential Psychotherapy. And there's a whole chapter on change in which he says, as therapists, we almost pay no attention to change. And I think as coaches we do. Is a big part of our focus is actually where's the change going to take place? How will you manifest the change? What do you expect the change to be, and did it happen? All these sorts of questions around change.